Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Amplify Your Business. Today, we are going to take you down a journey from refugee to entrepreneur and some of the heartaches that come along with being an entrepreneur and maybe not picking the right partner in life, but partner in business as well. We're going to get into all of this really interesting backstory with my guest today, Julieta Miranda. She is the founder of Kid Drop up in Fort McMurray. Welcome to the show, Julieta.
Thank you for having me, Lance. I'm very excited to be here today.
Okay, so before we get into all the tough questions, let me know what you think 3 things that every entrepreneur needs to know or understand from your experience being an entrepreneur.
Well, to be honest, the 3 hard things that everybody should know before deep diving into not just a startup, but business in general, is that it is a sacrifice. You do have to really make this front and center for yourself and for your family, and you all need to be invested with the same kind of passion in order to ride out the first few years, which are the toughest. You have to stay focused and really true to yourself, true to why you started this, why you're going down this journey, because many times you're going to want to quit, and quitting is not an option in success. So that's definitely number 2. And lastly, I want to say that you really need to be comfortable with change. You have to learn how to pivot early. I don't gravitate to the word failure. Everything is a lesson. So the quicker you learn it, the quicker you can, redirect yourself. And those 3 things have really helped me in my journey as an entrepreneur.
Yeah, and you're a 2-time entrepreneur. So you started out by working in your dad's business, and then you ended up basically buying him out. And I think you said retiring my dad was my dream, right? So, which I love that term. And then now you've started another business, Kid Drop. So why don't you tell me a little bit about Kid Drop and what it is that you guys are trying to accomplish or solve up in Fort McMurray with this particular service?
So Kid Drop is a transportation solution for busy families. Kids have a lot of scheduling, whether that's to school, piano, play dates. So, supporting parents with those movements in a safe manner, in one that's very transparent with cameras and drivers in uniform and consistency, that I think that really resonates with our community and hopefully other markets as well.
Yeah, this is just such a fascinating service for any parent out there. We definitely have all gone through it when our kids are in sports and all these different extracurricular activities, and you're trying to juggle your own schedule with work or even some of your own personal activities that you've got on the go, and you have to get your kids from point A to point B. And it can be a challenge. It can be a real challenge. And so your service comes in, picks them up, drops them off at the service or at the place where they need to be. And it's all super safe. You've got vetted drivers. And you said you also had some cameras in there to just give everybody a peace of mind that the kids are being well taken care of and so on. And so this is something that just shocked me when I heard about your business, why it's not actually here in Edmonton or some of the other bigger cities around. So I'm just floored by this, that you found this need up in Fort McMurray, and that's where you've launched the business.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, what's happened really quite organically is that we have been having families reach out to us from all parts of Canada that have come across our social media or some sort of media release that they're seeing where they could really benefit from this service locally. And so now I'm in this big drive, this big hustle to get this in as many areas as possible, because I think that, as the idea was proven here in Fort McMurray, where, we have shift workers, a lot of families don't have the familial support. We have a lot of transitional workers and that's just here, but that's not unique in other parts. And so I think that this service has longevity and scalability. And so I'm really excited to take this venture.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good point what you said in terms of Fort McMurray being just a really interesting case study or place to start from because of that lack of the family structure that a lot of the people have because a lot of them are new to the area, and so I myself I moved away from where my family was and into the big city of Edmonton, and I don't have any family here, and so I don't have the grandparents. With their ability to go and pick up my son and take him to something. And so you do definitely feel very much more isolated, and it's a lot more difficult. And then later on top of that, I raised him as a single parent since he was 4 years old, I suppose, and so then it's even that much more difficult because you're trying to figure out how to make it work on your own. And that's just with one child. I can't imagine, the families who have multiple children and with all in competitive sports or something. It would be just really difficult. So now I love what you were saying though, in terms of like, okay, so the opportunities here, we have the communities or different communities are reaching out and asking for this business to be in their markets as well, in their areas. So you're wanting to expand. Are you going to expand through, franchising it into other markets, or is it something corporate owned? What's your strategy there?
Well, our strategy is really in the short term to expand into Grand Prairie and into Edmonton, really get a feel for how the business model behaves. And we know Fort McMurray has a population of 75,000 people. Edmonton has a million. So there's some differences there. So understanding that before then launching into a franchise model, which is what I've always envisioned Kidrop to be, something that could be owned and operated by other families in other markets that where they, take on that entrepreneurial spirit and grow it just as we have here with the same principles, the same branding, the same message, because it is really important. It's all built around trust, around visibility, and having these practices that are near and dear to me, that will really resonate moving forward with the franchise opportunity.
Yeah, so those initial additional locations, so Edmonton and Grand Prairie, those will be corporate owned to begin with to test the model, the expansion, and then potentially then start franchising after that is the
That's
plan.
right, Lance. Yes,
Yeah,
you
really cool.
got it.
Yeah, and I think that's really a smart way to do it, right? Because you have to see how you can scale and identify what some of the challenges are in other marketplaces, and then build that into the model, and then really start to grow from there. Because that would be one of the challenges I suspect that you're going to have in the early days, anyway, is that the barrier to entry for the competition is not going to be very high. It's not some sort of proprietary, really, secret sauce to it, and so it'd be a matter of grabbing market share as quickly as you can. I suspect. Is that fair to say?
I think you're right. Yes. And other outfits have introduced transportation for kids in a daycare capacity. So one daycare,
Yeah.
one isolated vehicle, but nothing the way that we positioned ourselves where we cater to not just school transportation, extracurricular activities, but we also have a proposition for custody exchanges. So those are
Mm.
where children are in the middle of, separated families, some that are not able to talk to each other. So we'll get referrals from law firms to support families going through those challenges as well.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Yeah, and I could see that being a really good add-on service or an adjacent service to what the core of the business is. Now, I'm curious about the business model itself. So, is this a kind of pay per use, or are parents subscribing to it, and so they're getting charged a monthly fee? What is the model like?
So yeah, we do have both. So we about 80% of our business really gravitates around school transportation. So we do have the monthly one way and monthly round trip options for families, and then as well as ad hoc. So those are just one off, or just specifically every Thursday or every Tuesday and Thursday of the month, and people are able to book their days individually as well. So.
Yeah. Now, with a lot of the sports, the children have really early. I'm thinking hockey, right? Really early uh, arena times, and sometimes really late pickups as well, depending on the age of the child and so on. So, is that something where it's kind of like whatever they need, you can accommodate, or do you have very limited or strict kind of parameters in terms of the schedule that you adhere to as well?
No, we're custom service, so we're door to door and we're hand to hand. So if you have a small child, say a 4-year-old that has to be dropped off at daycare at 6 a.m., we'll pick them up right at their door, put them in the vehicle, buckle them up in a booster seat, and then take them right to their door at their day home and hand them out to the appropriate adult. So these practices, this is a custom service, almost like a limo service.
Yeah.
This is an example.
Yeah, yeah, very white glove, and exactly what parents are going to want for their children, right? Because you don't want them getting dropped off at the curb, and and then who knows what happens, right? So,
Exactly. That's right.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so in terms of the setting up this business, so you told me that you started this in, I think it was November of 2019, and then the pandemic hit a couple months after that, and you're sitting there going, okay, we have to close our doors, and then you reopened again that following fall. So I think it was September 2020. You got another relaunch there. Talk me through those early days and some of the challenges that you had to overcome, to start and launch the business, and then to actually have to close it down and then restart it.
So, as you can imagine, with a new transportation service and something that's unique to registry, to insurance, to everything else, we had planned to launch in September of 2019. But there's a lot of red tape, a lot of, well, what is this? Is it a taxi? Is this a school bus? Is this, it recognized really early on that we were pioneers in this space and that it needed to be categorized individually. So there was a lot of back and forth with a lot of government agencies to understand,
Hmm.
how to best approach this business. So then we launched in November, at the end of November, really 3 weeks before Christmas, which is probably the worst time ever. um, but did it, we put some radio ads, social media, kind of boosted a lot of attention how we could. So by January, that first van was completely full. It was going 100%. 2 weeks later, we pre-sold a second vehicle, onboarded that 2 weeks later. So by February,
Wow.
we had two vehicles going full blast. We had two full-time drivers. It was bananas. I was not expecting that kind of response so quickly and so early on. So when the news came in March that we were taking a 2-week break from life, apparently with COVID, that it was allowed me some breathing room. It was, I thought, okay, well, this will let me kind of reorganize things. So when that
Yep.
lasted a lot longer, it really did present other, how to relaunch in this COVID era, right? How do we take these additional precautions? We made alterations to the vehicles, obviously masks and all of that jazz, sanitation practices. So we soft launched in September. Wanting to make sure, what if my driver gets sick or their children get sick. So we really kind of did not do a lot of publicity to make sure that we were onboarding quickly. We wanted just to make sure that we were understood what the practices were, how to do it safely. And so that's what we did by the beginning of 2021. We were full blast again. We had figured out all the kinks and we've been going hustling ever since.
Well, I would imagine, right? Because through the pandemic, you didn't have the sports and a lot of the extracurricular activities that were happening, and so it would have been mostly just, the back and forth to school, probably, and maybe the odd other types of excursions. But then when that opened back up, that must have just enhanced the demand even that much more again.
That's right. Yeah, it did. Extracurricular took a little bit of time to build. I think people were still very reserved on, what their children were going to participate in. And a lot of times
Yeah.
parents could sit there and watch them. And so that was a challenge at the beginning. But what really opened up my eyes was all the need around school. So I learned so much more around school transportation, school logistics, and the challenges that the yellow buses were experiencing with insurance hikes, with hiring, and their logistical models about where they drop the children off, and so all those practices really played into how. How can we now leverage Kid Drop into school transportation so that the school boards recognize and trust and support in our community, and we've been able to build that quite strong.
Very interesting. So the core part of your business is still school drop off and pick up then.
That's right. That's where
Yep.
people need it. Yeah, that's where people are gravitating to. And then, of course, we are still offering the other services, and they are building month over month. But school seems to be really dominating our need.
Yeah. Yeah. Very interesting. And I would imagine, like, as you're growing, the rapid growth that you had must have been a lot of word of mouth, right? So one parent talks to another parent about the solution that they've found. And that must have been where you were really receiving a lot of that exponential growth. Is that accurate? Or?
Yeah, I think you're right. That we're a small community, even though there's 75,000 people. It's not 6 degrees of separation. Everybody knows somebody. Somebody has seen it. I think the biggest support in getting the word out about Kid Drop has been the visibility of the vehicles. So
Yeah.
they say Kid Drop right on them. Everybody's starting to see them at their designated schools. And it was only until this last September 2022, that we were able to offer the service citywide. Because even in a small community like Fort McMurray, we have over 20 elementary schools, and we just couldn't support that with a small fleet. That we're now finally able to make it to all corners of town, and yeah, it's been great.
So what would you say were some of the biggest surprises that you had along the way, besides the COVID wrinkle, right? But outside of that, what surprised you the most as you were building this business?
I think one thing that resonated with me when I launched Kid Drop was that I needed to find work in which I can bring my children with me if I needed to, and that really resonated with moms when I would put out ads for drivers. It was those parents that were looking for work, and so being able to provide employment flexible enough that they don't have to rely on childcare, and that they're able to bring their kids on board and drop them off to school while providing the same service to our clients, was something that grew organically. And now we've created a whole culture, a mom culture in our organization that I'm so proud of, and I just haven't. Everybody that's started working with me has stayed with me, so I'm very proud of that.
Yeah, that's really amazing because I mean that's one of the challenges that when I think of the yellow bus service, they're always struggling to try to find drivers, it seems like. And so here you are with a competitive model to that, but it's not a problem at all in retaining and attracting those employees. And so that flexibility, right, that you're able to provide them for them to be able to create income themselves and still be able to manage it with their lifestyle, that's great, and their life situation. And I know that you mentioned, you needed something that was going to be flexible because you are a single parent right now as well. And so I know the backstory to this a little bit, but we haven't gotten into all the details. And so I'd like to go back to your first business. I teased this a little bit in the intro about how you were basically, you didn't pick the right partner for the business, but also your life partner too. And so you ended up in a divorce situation with your ex, who was obviously somebody who was involved in the business and that business. So if you want to take me back to that time and just tell us a little bit about the business and how that came to be, I guess, the separation and then the parting of ways with the business, because as I understand it, it was maybe not the most easy of a transition.
Sure. Well, so the business was called Romeo's Tile, and Romeo is my dad, and he named me Juliet. So that's where the story begins. I'm his oldest of three girls, and he always wanted a boy, and he never got it. So I was always that boy, that the oldest, following in his footsteps. So growing up with him as a tile installer, my sisters and myself, we would always help. carry boxes of tiles here and there. We were always involved in the business on some capacity, however we could, from young little girls. So I knew that as I got older, that eventually there was going to be a conversation about the business. And when he moved to Fort McMurray, and the boom was happening here in 2004, 5, and 6, it was just growing so quickly that I ended up taking a bit of a hiatus from university to come and support him here in Fort McMurray. I never left. I stayed here, and after just a few short years, I ended up purchasing his business. It was a lifelong dream of mine to retire him because he had always worked on his knees, and you can imagine how that is on your body. So that was a goal of mine. So I was able to achieve that in 2010, and it was very much a mom and pop operation at the time. So when I took it over, I grew it from about $350,000 a year to a multi-million-dollar business in 8 years.
Congratulations. That's amazing.
Thank you. Thank you. Did a lot of, it was so much experiment because I did not take business in university. My background is in criminology. I wanted to be a profiler for CSIS. That was my big ambitious dream. But so now, talking about pivoting, I love business so much now that, I've been kind of thrown into it from the ground up. It's been the most incredible journey of my life. And I'm so glad that I had that opportunity to take that through my father's pioneering those steps.
Yeah, totally. And it's so rewarding, right? To be able to do that, to retire your dad, but also to have carried on the legacy that he'd started as well. And so that kind of goes into this next chapter of the story, right?
Yeah, that's right. So in 2018, I separated from my ex-husband, who was newly, I guess, into the business formally. And unfortunately, through the divorce and what I could call a hostile takeover, he did end up taking over the business. And I exited the company in a not favorable way. So I'm not a fighter by nature. I'm definitely a lover, and I'm a student of life, and things will come up and you don't foresee them, and you just pick up the pieces and you just move forward. So that's what I did. I was very quick to recognize that was something that I have to let go of and move forward. And then so now being in that new position as a single parent, with time, trying to figure out what the next moves are, looking around, being that stay-at-home mom for a year, I realized that there was a real need around transportation, especially, well, I don't want to say especially here in Fort McMurray because we have horrible winters. And that resonates in other communities, but the winters here are tough. And a lot of times families that bring families to support or they don't always drive. So they don't have that ability to move the kids to and from school or any other activities.
Yeah. So, I mean, talk to me a little bit about the whole mental process that you went through, where you said, and it seems like you really did approach it in a really productive and healthy way, where you kind of let go of it and moved on. I know that would be just so incredibly difficult, especially being that it's a family business, and then you had grown it to such a stage, right? And then to step away from that. So I'm just curious, where does that mental fortitude come from? Because that's a real gut punch, right? To have that happen.
Yeah, it is. And I think that when people are going through a divorce, this isn't a decision that happens spontaneously. I think this is something that is in the works for some time before it actually becomes true. And that was the case with me. I remember wanting to have a conversation around counseling and like, we need to work on this so that we can get better. And him saying to me, well, I think that's great for you because you're the one with the problem. And I took that like really to heart. I said, you know what? Maybe I am. So that last year before we separated, I did nothing but work on myself. I took leadership workshops. I got to see Tony Robbins in Calgary. I got to travel. I worked on my health. I worked on with my children, how to be a better parent. I really really did take that last year to really understand who I am and where I am as far as what is it that I want out of life? Why am I not happy here? And
Yeah.
it was through that journey that really gave me the confidence to say, you know what? There's more. I mean, I'm happy. I am healthy. I have worked on myself, and the denominator that isn't working is him.
Yeah.
So the decision finally came, and it came in a healthy way. And I think that mindset, not just in your personal life, but in business, is a big indicator of where you are and if you will achieve success. And I think that if your mind is right, if you're focused, if you are true to yourself and you have those honest conversations about, you know, where you want to go, what makes you happy, what your priorities are, if you're true to that, then I think you can achieve anything. You can overcome anything. Things
Mm.
aren't going to scare you the way that they would normally. So I think, being a confident person and recognizing your ability to just start anew, it's all possible. You just have to accept the things you cannot change.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well said. And I would think that, having gone through all of that profession or personal work, I mean, has really probably helped you out on the professional side of things, on the business side of things this time around as well. So I'd love if you could share with us what is easier this second go around with this new business now after you've had the experience of growing the first one, and then also obviously all the personal development that you've been doing.
Well, I think I'll speak a little bit first to what I've carried over from what I had before, which is I really lead from my heart. And I had 13 full-time employees with me in the flooring outfit, and I have 10 full-time employees now. And I lead from a place of compassion and understanding. I will always take the time to listen to people, listen to where they're coming from, and then understand what those challenges are and how to go about supporting them. Because I think if you're just a dictator, do, and then they're not performing, it's like you have to get to the root of that. We're all human, and I think that if you take the approach from that leadership position of support, and if your team is failing, it's on me. I don't go, oh, it's them that's failing, it's that. No, it always starts with you, and they're looking to you for not just leadership, but also and what that leadership looks like. And I've had the opportunity to meet with my staff one-on-one and have these really enriching, and they usually end in tears conversations about where they are, where they want to go, and how they see themselves growing within Kid Drop. And because we are growing so quickly and there is so much opportunity to grow themselves within the organization, that it makes for a really rich creative environment of female empowerment. So it's pretty great. I just
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And that's the thing that I would say, just hearing your story, is that you're building a business, yes, but it seems like you're also building quite the community that has so much more meaning to the people that are being touched by through the opportunity to work with you, right? So that empowerment, the support system that's there, it's different than your typical business per se. It'd be very different than what it was over at the tile business, right?
That's right. Yeah. And what I will say is that this does trickle into our customers as well. I
Yeah.
had an opportunity to speak to many of our clients, but when they come back to us and say, just a couple weeks ago, I had a mom call us and say, I was nervous about trying the service. My child is quite young, and this is the first time that I've ever been in a position to have lunch at work without having to leave. Like, I always have to take my lunch hour to go and grab my kid from school, take them to daycare, and come back. And what this service has allowed me to do, have that peace of mind, but also be more productive at work, is. And she said it in such a touching way that makes you emotional. Makes you
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, no, understandably so. And this is the thing that I love about businesses like yours that have that ability to build that community and that tribe around the business is that it is really it just becomes such a success because of the commitment that everybody has and the love that everybody has for it, right? And so it's beyond just a business and a customer transaction. There's so much more meaning there, and so because of that, it just is such becomes such a stronger business. And so I'm envious because we don't have that as much in my business, and so many other people who are listening here are probably quite envious with it as well. Now, I'm really curious if you were to be able to write yourself, your younger self, your entrepreneurial younger self, a letter at any point in your previous businesses. So at the beginning of you getting involved with the tile business or the start of this particular one, Kid Drop, what would be in that letter? What kind of advice would you give to your younger self?
The biggest advice that I would give to my younger self is to dream as big as you want to dream. I think
Mm,
that we often limit ourselves by, where how we grew up financially, right? Or, sometimes if you don't see it, you can't imagine it to be true for yourself. And I think that we are so much more capable. We're capable of so much more than we would ever give ourselves credit for. So if there's
mm,
ever doubters, whether that's a coach or whether that's your own family, you have to learn to block that out and really believe in yourself. It's the belief in yourself that will move you forward far greater than anybody saying good job or good for you. It's like you have to do that
yeah.
for yourself. And so practicing kindness and words of affirmation are key. And I try and instill that into my own children.
So has that always been easy for you, or is that a skill that you've really had to work on to develop to the point where you're at now?
In all honesty, it's something that has been easy for me. I think my parents have had to achieve so much in life, and they've been leaders by example.
Yeah.
And so, my dad, he didn't have a pair of shoes until he was 12 years old. And I taught my children are 8 and 10. So trying to have a conversation with them. Imagine if you were still barefoot playing soccer or playing basketball and not having even just those basic needs. I think that, always wanting to progress and be in a better place year after year and getting used to challenges and adversity and being positive, being good to people. It all works together. It's a cohesive thing, and karma is a real thing. So, be a
Yeah.
good person, be a student of life. Don't think that you know it all, because you don't. I definitely don't. I'm learning every day, and that's something that really gives me, it empowers me. It doesn't debilitate me. And I really try and focus on all the little incremental successes. I celebrate all the time. And I think everybody should laugh out loudly, at least once a day. I think that would make such a huge difference for mental health and just for personal growth.
Absolutely beautiful. I just appreciate those words of wisdom so much because we oftentimes get caught up in the challenges of what it is that we're doing and entrepreneurial ventures. Being an entrepreneur, there's a lot of challenges. You get knocked down a lot of times, and so it's that resilience that gets you back up and you try again, right? But if you don't have that mindset that you have, it just becomes so much more difficult to get back up. And that dreaming big, I love that too, especially with your personal story. So we didn't touch on that a whole lot, and we're running out of time, so we can't get into the details. But for the listeners, I mean, your family came here as refugees when you were 7 years old, and then you've built these successful businesses, and retired your parents and so on, and it's just the dreams that you all had coming here, it seems to me anyway, that you've realized them and then some. So congratulations, good on you for doing it. And I just find what you're doing and how you speak about business and entrepreneurship is just really inspiring. So thank you for sharing those stories with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lance. Public speaking is not my thing. I shared that with you very early
Oh,
on,
you
but
did great.
you made it super comfortable. And so it's just another wonderful opportunity for me to grow. And so thank you for having me on the show today.
Yeah. And now, if anybody wanted to connect with you, if we have some listeners in Fort McMurray, or obviously people in the very near future will be able to tap into your services in Edmonton and Grand Prairie, what is the best way for them to reach out to you?
Probably the best way, and we have a lot of contact information, would be on our website, which is kid-drop.com. And you can find our phone numbers, our emails, and I see all of them. So feel free. I'd be happy to reach out. And if there's any burning questions from an entrepreneurial perspective, I would happily have a conversation with anybody looking to reach out.
Awesome.
So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for that, Julieta. Okay, so for those of you who enjoyed this episode and you want to check out other episodes, head over to amplifyyourbusiness.ca. That's where you're going to find the full archive. And of course, if you're, preferring to listen to it as opposed to watch the whole video, you can head over to any of your favorite podcasting platforms and just search Amplify Your Business there, and you're going to be able to find this as well. Until next time, everybody have a prosperous day.